When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode. Hey, folks, Mark Ledlow here with the Fearless Mindset Podcast, and today I bring to you Steve from Pepsi Cola. We bumped into each other at the Ontic Summit, and the guy is busier than busy. And I'll let him tell that side of the story. But we had just had a great time at the Ontic Summit, just protective intelligence over there. And shout out to Lucas and the whole team over there for what they do and providing an environment where we can connect. And Steve has a background with the U.S. State Department, a risk professional, oversaw a budget of like $38 million. It's just crazy to me what he did. And now here he is, Pepsi Cola, doing his thing. Spent some time with Yum Brands, Chief Security Officer of Global Asset Protection, Yum. And Steve's done some stuff. And I'm fortunate. We're honored to have him. I know he's a busy guy right now, flying all over the world, probably doing his thing and managing operations. So, Steve, welcome to the show. And the listeners are excited to hear from you. I know they are.
Well, Mark, thanks for having me. I'm really humbled and excited to be here. It's nice to see you again, too, by the way. It's been
a minute. Brother. You too. We're freezing in Austin there for a few days, weren't we?
Yeah, that's facts. That is facts.
So, Steve, what are you seeing out there? You know, we got shut down with a pandemic. Everybody's like, well, you know, all the hard chargers out there and all the agents want to make their millions of dollars as bodyguards and all that. What's the reality? What are you seeing out there from Pepsi Cola standpoint and your operations? What's the vibe on the ground now?
Well, you know what? I'll keep it pretty broad. So I'm not going to speak for PepsiCo as much as I'm going to speak just from the industry perspective.
Perfect.
I think you bring up a good point. You know, it's a really tough time to be in law enforcement, to be in public service now. There's a million reasons that we can get into as to why that is, but it's a really tough time to serve others, right? Mm-hmm. And for that reason, you see a lot of people getting out. They want to do something different, and they think, and the desire sometimes is to make the leap to corporate. So from private or from public service to private industry. The challenge that you have is timing, because there's so many people making that leap, and we all believe that we are the unicorn, and that we all offer something unique and different. And while that may be true, it's really hard to sift through a pile of very talented and uniquely qualified individuals with very similar backgrounds, just at different levels, especially where you're trying to have them contribute in the private space. Is going to take a little bit of evolution because it is different. And it's going to take some time, because remember, in a lot of cases, you've left careers where you've earned your way to a certain level. And the thought was, we were sold the bill of goods. Hey, when you leave public service, you're just going to be gifted this high ranking position in corporate industry. And that's just not real life. You have to earn it there too. And just because you did it in private industry does not mean that you are uniquely equipped to do it or just because you did it in public industry doesn't mean you're uniquely equipped to do it in private. It's a journey, right? So that's the reality. Is there's a mass exodus. There's a lot of people vying for very few spots, and it's not always immediately what you think it may be. It's awesome. I love it. I would not change it for the world. But I also loved what I did before. Equally, so
what did you like more? Would you prefer the State Department government side? Are you doing the private sector for the difference of it?
You know, apples and oranges. And you know, I was blessed and lucky to have been a police officer also. So I spent over 20 years in almost 30 years in public service. So I was a police officer in Fairfax County, Harrisonburg City, and then a federal agent for 17 with the State Department. And the intrinsic value in giving to others and the noble servant leadership that we engage in is invaluable. And I was blessed and lucky to have a lot of experiences that 99.9% of the world will never have, right? But in the private industry, it's different. And you know, I didn't become a husband and a father not to ever see my wife and kids. So I love seeing that. I don't know that they love it the same way, but you know, I have weekends to a degree. it's not always responding to a crisis. It's not always a response mode to crisis that weren't foreseeable in this instance. We work in the corporate industry to be a lot more proactive, preventative, and predictive in how we go about our business. And typically you're a lot more robust, but they also have a different threat tolerance than private sector. Like you have a zero tolerance when you're in I keep messing the words up, but in public sector, when you work for the public, there is a zero risk tolerance. And in the private sector, they prefer it to be zero, but they have a little bit more wiggle room. So it's a little bit different in how they think through safety and security, risk and resilience holistically. So I can't say which one I like better. I love them both. I like what I'm doing now the most because that's what I'm doing now. But if you would have asked me when I was a police officer, I would have told you I love that the most. And wherever I was at the time, that's what I love the most. And for now, this is what suits me and my lifestyle the best.
Well, it sounds like your personality is very adaptable and you live in the moment.
Yeah. You know what? I think that's that is not unique to me. I think, they used to say that only the strong survive. I don't know that that's true. The most adaptable survive, right? If you look at alligators and crocodiles, they're like the last remaining dinosaurs. And I'd offer that the reason they're still around is because they adapt, right? Freshwater, saltwater, land, water, it doesn't matter. They figure it out.
True.
So you have to be malleable, and you have to be, I like to think that, both me and the people I surround myself with are lifetime learners. So, I just want to know what I don't know and engage in things differently because there's more than one right answer, right? So
exactly. So Steve, here's the $1 million question, the gold nugget for the audience, for the younger men and women who want to get in the industry. What is your advice to succeed in this industry? Everybody wants to know how to break into the industry. That's the biggest topic of everybody, I think.
Yeah. Well, breaking into the industry, first of all, there's no magic bullet, right? It takes a little bit of luck. Timing matters. It's pacing and sequencing. But it also takes a whole lot of grind because people believe that your buddy can just make a call and pick you up. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work like that, right? When you work in private industry, one of the things they do is they stack the deck. So your buddy is probably the last person that has any say. You're going to be vetted. You're going to be vetted by a whole bunch of other people to see, can they work cross-functionally, how they think, do we want to work with this person holistically, right? There's a lot to it. And I can tell you, I went through more interviews in the private sector than I ever went through in the public, ever.
Really?
So there's a vetting process that is different. And the security acumen was the last stuff they asked me about. My resume said I could do that. I did it for 20 years. So you must be able to do that stuff. We want to know what else, right? So it's not that there's a magic bullet, but it does require effort. And what I mean by that is, you can't just wait and you can't just apply via LinkedIn and send out applications. You have to be proactive and aggressive in saying you're interested in researching places that you want to be and spend time. Think about the products you like, the products you eat or sell or drive or whatever, and call them directly because they don't always know when they're going to be hiring either, right? The world is fluid. So people make choices all the time. And they might not be hiring today, but you just happen to call on the day where, somebody in their security department decided that they're going to call it a day. And had you not made that call on that day, not only would they not know, but you wouldn't have known that they were opening and they would have never thought of you to tell you to apply, right? By the time you apply, there's 3,000 applicants. And then the applicant pool, remember in safety, security, risk, and resilience protection, the security part is almost standardized. Right. A lot of the things that we do are very similar. What's dissimilar are the attributes that differentiate how you think, how you plug into the rest of the organization holistically. And if there was one nugget I would give anybody trying to crack into the industry, if you will, learn the business that you want to support. And I mean, know it and learn it. Because we are business professionals first. We are security professionals always, right? So I am better prepared to help my partners and my stakeholders when I understand what they're trying to accomplish, where they're trying to go. Because remember, I'm in the business of enabling. I'm not in the business of telling people no. I'm in the business of telling people how. right?
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to make people be safe and feel safe, which are mutually exclusive. But our job is to teach them how to think, because if I change how you think, it will affect how you behave.
Wow.
Right.
So true.
So if you think about speed limit signs, right, we can't overregulate everywhere. Every roadway in the continental U.S. has a speed limit sign, and yet somehow every day everybody's speeding, which means that the rule alone is not enough, right? But most of the people buckle their seatbelt, and the question is why? It's not because the law says so. It's because they're afraid of going through the windshield, because somebody they know, right? There's proximity where somebody that they know has been hurt by not doing that. So it's the willful compliance and educating people to think differently and thereby behave differently, not just the regulation. Right. When we were in private industry, well, the rule says my job is just to enforce the rule. The private industry isn't the same. It's not as simple as black and white. We make money in the gray, right? We make money in the gray.
Right.
So, some of us are people, why you make rules? Oh, I didn't know you couldn't do this. And since there was no rule, I did it, right? So
true. Yeah, the corporate side, what I see, I have a few clients I support, and the cardinal rule is you got to justify why you're there. Like a company supporting Pepsi Cola, they got to justify: is there a threat? Is it a perceived threat? Well, yeah, sort of. Okay, we'll keep billing. Okay, threat's gone. No, there's no. Once you remove the justifying that invoice, the security need is now over. There's a reason for security, and like you said, risk mitigation. That's all part of risk mitigation. I'm sure Amazon uses it for the workplace file type of thing. But from the corporate standpoint, like me being a vendor for other clients, I have to justify that invoice. I have those guys taking pictures. Oh, there's a threat. Take pictures, send it to our point of contact. And so we're always mitigating risk by doing that. Do you also see that to justify your existence? The corporation wants to see proof of why you do what you do, so they pay your salary. Is it that deep?
So there's a watch out in the security space, because even security professionals, a lot of them articulate what you articulate, and that is, we're a cost center. We don't make money in a traditional sense, like operations may. Right. They turn profit.
Yeah.
I beg to differ in that space. My job is to keep profit in your pocket. So I make money so you don't lose it or let it walk away on accident. Right. And with regards to risk, well, that is a sliding scale, and it is a matter of perspective, because earlier I was talking about being safe and feeling safe, and they're mutually exclusive. And most people have them exactly backwards anyway. And my example would be, a lot of people will tell you they get stressed out when they go to the airport to go through TSA. They got to take off their shoes and take off their belt and, take out their computer and their phone and all this stuff. And it stresses them out. But there's never more security than at that location, at that checkpoint at TSA. And they relax when they come home from their trip and they're waiting for their baggage claim, and they're standing there, they're on their phone, calling their Uber already, waiting for their bag, not really paying attention. Their bag's over there, and they're over here looking, or they set their carry-on down and they're waiting for their bag to come out of the belt. But the reality is, everybody has access to baggage claim. Random people can walk in from outside. So the place that is singularly most unsafe in the airport is the one place that most people are comfortable, because they're back home. Right. So going back to, if I change the way you think, I affect the way you behave. My job is to help you see around corners and look at situations that, while they seem benign, aren't necessarily scary. But you have to be aware of them, because a pandemic is not something that is unforeseen. They're not unforeseen to me, right? I mean, every year you have E. coli breakouts in California with regards to lettuce every single year. So the question is, if it's more than one product or more than one state, well, the same plans that you have for recovery, right, for that is the same that you would have for a global pandemic, regardless of illness. You have to protect yourself, and then you have to respond, and you have to be resilient enough to get back to business as quickly as practical. I say that because the way that we used to have to justify ourselves, and the way that we often do, is through anecdotal stories. Well, this one time there was this kidnapping, or this one time this is what this executive did, or this one time, right? Data and analytics are your best friend, because that's how every other business entity talks about and measures, right, what's going on. It's a measurement. So I would like to show you year over year, the challenge that you have is, you don't realize that you've had 337 catalytic converters stolen out of your industry because you only see them one at a time, or there are two every other month, and you don't really pay attention to them. But collectively, here's what that means to your business, because every truck that's out of service for 3 hours requires two other people to go get a rental car. How much does that cost for 8 hours to now deliver your product? Or it doesn't get delivered, and how much does that cost? 388 times, or whatever the number is, across the country. That's $1 billion or $1 million a month that happened, or over the course of the year, that you weren't paying attention to, but we saw it. And here's why it matters, right? Because a minuscule investment in protecting that changes all of this, right?
Domino effect.
There you go. So how we tell the story it's not good enough or easy enough to just talk about the scared straight or the boogeyman story, right? One of the things I tell people all the time is I don't tell scary stories. I don't. Because if I were to ask you about your home, in your boudoir, in your master bedroom or your master bathroom, do you have any picture from work? Odds are probably not. But in times where you had an office space and you went into the office, did you have anything personal on your desk? Family photo, some trinket, a coin, something that reminded you of something personal? Probably. Which means if I tell you a personal story, you are more likely to carry that to work. Than if I tell you a work story, you're less likely to carry that home. So at work, I tell you personal stories. The reason this matters is because you work to live, and I want you to go home the same way you came here. Because what's important isn't just moving and selling for the company in which you work. It's also going back to enjoy the fruits of your labor with the family or friends that are most important and most valuable to you. That's why you actually do what you do.
Amen.
Right.
Amen.
So for those reasons, the stories that we talk about and the justifications that we give are data supported to say what matters most. Right?
Bingo.
That is the why. So, I am very cautious about allowing people to say, and even saying it myself, that we're just the cost center. Because if you say that, then we allow that, and then people believe that. That's not what we are.
So true.
Right?
So true.
We're the opposite of that. Yeah,
right?
This is an investment in your long-term sustainability and future and business continuity. The reason you're doing this is so you can do it again tomorrow. The reason you're doing this is so you can recover faster, because the fastest to recover in times of challenge win, and they win big.
They bet on themselves
every time.
Wow.
Right? That stuff happens, right? Stuff happens. It's how you react to that stuff and how quickly you can get back to what you do the best or what you do well. That is the differentiator. And every business person understands that for sure. Every operator understands that. When you take fire, it's not just it's not taking the fire, it's what happens right after that. What happens now matters. Yeah. Right?
Now, I think we've been groomed in such a reactionary type of industry. It's reactionary versus proactive. And I think we have a pull and push effect in this industry. And I think you clicked a little light bulb in my brain when you said all that. It's like, wow.
Well, there's an evolution taking place in the industry. You're right. We have been groomed to be reaction. If you think about police or military, you go where duty requires. When they call you, you are perfectly equipped to respond. We do that exceptionally well every time. But how you make companies bigger, faster, and stronger is when you can tell them what's coming. When you can see around the corner, right? And you use data and analytics because it's cyclical, kind of like the moon cycle. 30 days from now, you're going to get another full moon. When the moon is full, the tide rises. When the tide, right? So it's that. When we apply those techniques that we've applied in other places that way to the business, we can help them make holistically informed decisions better. Do you want to accept it? Do you want to mitigate it? Do you want to avoid it? Or do you want to leverage that risk and do it anyway? Because when you can make people comfortable and feel safe operating in places that are challenging, it is uncontested market share.
Wow. Never thought about it that way.
Yeah. I go where you're uncomfortable. And it's not because it's only scary to you. Right?
Right.
We're down there. Right. And one of the byproducts of being a diplomat is diplomacy happens in places that are difficult. They're war zones. We have to go. They are actively engaged in conflict. We have to go out there. Not acceptable. Is it dangerous? It is. So the question isn't, are we going? We're going. The question that they're actually asking us is, how do we go and come back in one piece?
Right. Get the
It's
mission
no
done.
different. It's no different. What they're saying to us is, listen, we have a challenging environment. We need some help and we need some expertise. How do we do this efficiently and effectively so we can get in and get out in one piece? That's what they're asking. And preferably, we'd like to do that where it's cost effective. We're not saying we won't spend money. We love to believe that sometimes more is better. More is more, right? More is just more, right? And I would argue that there are a number of ways to be successful. And you take a small tactical military unit versus a large battalion.
Sure.
Sometimes they have the same mission.
Right.
So how does that work exactly? Sometimes more is just more. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. What is the effect? What is the time? Blah, 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 right? It's the same kind of thing. So this is the same thing in the safety and security, risk and resilience spaces. We're trying to make sure that we're utilizing the right tools in the right space to get the desired outcome for the business first. And when we think about it that way, it changes the game.
Absolutely.
So
what was the foundation for you in your journey to make you so successful in your role right now? What was the underlying foundation? What was it to make you tick the way you do?
I think what it is a whole lot of people bet on me when I didn't know better. A whole lot of people saved me from myself because I've always been kind of a habitual line stepper, maybe. I don't know if that's a fair assessment. But you know those kids that are always like, where they're always like, why? But why? But why? But why?
That was you.
I'm that guy that asks why like 12 times. You want to punch him in the face, but the question really isn't. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm trying to understand. Right. Okay. And what happens is, if we know how we got here, we understand the conditions that created this. Because sometimes you have the right answer at the wrong time. Okay. Sometimes you have the wrong answer, but you don't know if you don't ask enough. Well, why is this fence here? Because the intention or sometimes the action is to remove the fence. But if you're going to remove a fence, you might want to know why they put it there in the first place. Just because you don't see the pit bull, it may be in the house, right? And if you pull the fence up, it may create a problem. So your question was the foundation, and I think it was other people's investment in honing in those types of questions and understanding. I think the other foundational component is a desire to actually do and be better, right? And that's not in comparison to other people. That's just in comparison to the situation that we inherited.
Right, product of our environment.
Right. So I just want to be better than. I'm here now, so I want to leave it better than I got here, whatever that means, and I want to do better than we're doing, whatever that means. So the question is, how can I help? Right. Gotcha. I was a public servant first, so how can I help? So a lot of my success has been that actual question. Hey, how can I help you?
Interesting. Wow.
Right. Because when you're solving problems for people, who doesn't want that?
Right. Exactly. How can I help?
Yeah, you have people right now that you call because that is what they ask. So
how can I serve you?
Yeah. How can I help? And I think a desire to actually be effective and help other people is a key tenet to continued growth and opportunity and success. Is I legitimately find value in trying to be helpful to other people.
And it's amazing. It comes full circle back to you down the road.
Always. You don't get to the top by being selfish. You actually get to the top by being selfless, because you're not going to get there alone. Absolutely. And other people don't help those that go by themselves. They do not help selfish. Right. So
true. Leadership, especially.
So I've been lucky that other people have taken a chance and invested in me, because at some point I've earned their trust enough so that they understand that is my intent, is to just be helpful. And if I feel like I'm not helpful, then I move aside. If I feel like I can't help you, or I'm not doing, if I'm not doing you a service, then I'll quit before you fire me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Here's a $1 million question, Steve. Being that we're in an alpha male female industry, I think we talked about the ego when we were at Ontic a little bit about the ego in the industry. What do we do with the ego? What's your advice to those that really struggle be in control all the time. What's your advice on that?
Well, you have to understand that unless you're in the security industry, unless the product and the company that you're serving is security based, not only are you not in control, you're not even a major player. Ooh. They may ask your advice, right? We're hired to be advisors. Our job is to help people and inform people that actually make decisions. They may defer to our expertise,
right?
But my job is simply to provide advice, not for them to take it. Right? It's kind of like being a father or a husband. I give advice all the time. That doesn't mean anybody in my house is going to listen ever.
Sure.
Right? Sure. They may. My job is to give it. Right.
Yeah.
And then my job is also to know that if they chose not to, and I was correct to not say, well, I told you. Because that's not the job. The job is to have an opinion, but hold it lightly and to be able to pivot because it's to be helpful to other people. So I'm saying, listen, we're looking at the same picture. To you, it looks like a bunch of dots and it makes a beach. To me, it looks like a bunch of dots. But you see that over there? That's actually a shark. So one of the things you need to think about is, if that is a shark, what are you going to do with it? We need to think about that. Before we walk all the way down there and don't have a plan, you might want to bring something to deal with that in case it is what it looks like, right? They could take it or not. But if you walk out there and that is a shark and you don't have a plan, it's hard for me to respond then, right? I mean, I can only do what I do. You've tied my hands. But if we've discussed it out loud, we can come up with 5 or 6 different opportunities. We do something, we do nothing. We figure it out on the way. We bring these tools just in case. If we get close and we realize it's not what it is, we ditch them, right? We can plan. And most folks, they say, well, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. It's more like everybody has a plan from which to deviate when they get punched in the face. Right? Because you have a plan and you probably will get punched in the face. The question is, what's the secondary and tertiary option and how do you pivot so that you're still going to be okay? Right? Because you can get punched in the face. That's not the goal. The goal isn't not to get hit. The goal is not to get knocked out.
Exactly.
Right.
Lose your consciousness and you're down on that UFC mat like Frank Mir was with Brock Lesnar in that UFC fight.
Yeah, I mean the job is how do you keep it going, right?
So how do you respond? How do you keep on getting up? What was the your key successes and let's call them victories of maturing in your career at the State Department? What did you take away from the State Department that's helped you in your career now?
I had somebody tell me very early that I was too big for my britches. Very early. Wow. And that was a humbling experience, but it was necessary. Because what I thought I was doing was being helpful. What I was actually doing was overstepping my bounds by a lot because I didn't know what I didn't know. So one of the most humbling experiences actually taught me the most because I was very wrong and just was unaware. My EQ had to, at some point, catch up to my IQ. We have a lot of smart people out there. Sure. But if they are unaware, those smart people will walk right off a cliff in a minute.
That's
and other people will follow them, right?
Right off the cliff.
Right off the cliff, and other people will follow. You have to be aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are. I could tell you 1,000,000 times over what I don't do very well. I will struggle to tell you what I do well. That's the God's honest truth. I could tell you 1,000,000 times over. I tend to overtalk. I tend to come off a little condescending because I talk. You start to talk, I start to get excited. I meet you at the end of the statement, right? And people want to be brought along. They want to be a part of the decision making. They want to be a part of understanding.
Right.
And I was unaware of that. And once you're aware, then you have opportunities to correct real time. If you're unaware, then you will continue to make the same mistake time and time and time again without deviation. So in the State Department, you have to have humility and you have to be humble enough to actually receive constructive criticism. And if people are giving you constructive criticism, take it. Because one of the other things I learned is when random people validate what people that you love have told you, good or bad, believe it every time.
Believe it every time.
So if your loved one is telling you, you know what, you talk too much, and you think it's them, and they're just being critical, but some random person says, you know what, you talk too much, you probably talk too much. And they're telling you actually because they care. That's not a slight. In both cases, they're both telling you because they actually care about you enough to actually expose it to you. That's also about positive traits.
Mhm.
You know, you probably have a friend, if you don't do it yourself, that doodles, and you look over on their paper and like, man, you're pretty good at that. And they're like, and they shrug you off. They shrug
Right.
you off
Right.
because that's not what they do. They're in a different career. Meanwhile, they're actually a legit artist. The problem is they don't realize they're not listening to the constructive feedback that they're getting. They are actually really good. And what you find is when you work in your passion or in your gift, the work becomes easier. You know, they used to have this saying that, oh, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. That's a lie. I've always loved what I do, but I work very hard, right?
Yes, you
But
do.
when you work in your passion, in your gift, it's natural. It's more natural. So it doesn't feel like work the same way.
Right.
So you'll work, it just doesn't feel the same. The effort that required is less. So the other lesson is that, right? The awareness and the humility to actually receive criticism that people are giving you. Listen. I'm a talker. I wasn't really a good listener. And that applied not just at work, it applied at home too. And when you get better at that, everything gets better. Right? It's like watching a movie backwards. Right. And it sounds funny to say, but we get excited and we think we know, and we've seen this before and we have the answer. But sometimes it's not about giving the answer. It's about helping other people get to the answer. Because now you're building an army where people can all figure it out as opposed to just you. I don't get paid to get the answers. I get paid to create environments so that other people can get plenty of answers. Right. They're smarter than me anyway. Right.
What was your strength at the State Department? Obviously, you oversaw a big budget.
You said, what was my strength?
What was your strength in the State Department? I mean, I was over looking at your profile on LinkedIn. It said you ran a huge budget. Was that kind of your strength?
No. I couldn't tell you what my strength was. I had the unique opportunity to do a lot of things. And diplomatic security, you move around quite a bit.
Sure.
So I did a lot of protection. I did protection a couple different times, served overseas in a couple of unique assignments. I did major events a couple of different times. So when you're building programs for, the U.S. equities for Olympics or World Cup, or you're supporting some of these extremely high profile secretaries of state, or you're working in embassies and consulates and you're advising ambassadors on the life safety of their people, their facility, their information, or the guard RFPs and those kinds of budgets, or the entire travel budget for a secretary of state's global travel and all of the accoutrements that go with it. That's not necessarily the forte. It's just what is required to get the job done.
Sure.
So I think one of my strengths is I'm actually a really good connector. I don't know a whole lot, but I know a whole lot of people that know a whole lot. So I take people that have and put them with people that need, and then I get out of the way, right? And I let them do their thing. Yeah,
you guys do your thing.
Yeah, but that goes back to EQ. Like, if I mess around and I try to do stuff I shouldn't be doing, it's problematic, right? And if you think about, you said earlier, we're in an alpha dominated environment. Who likes to be micromanaged? Right. You have a lot of folks that are really good at what they do, and they'll tell you.
Right.
So let them do it. Right. I don't care how you get there. Right. There's a million ways to drive from Dallas, Texas to Washington, D.C. I don't care how you go. Just be there by Thursday. Don't kill anybody. Don't get any tickets. Don't break any laws. Meet me there on Thursday. How you get there, I gotta stop caring about all that.
Right.
And when you give people the freedom to be creative, to problem solve, to figure it out, you'll be flabbergasted at what they can produce when you let them, and what they want to produce. Right? When you create safe environments for people to dissent, for people to create, it's amazing what the human mind is capable of. And the problem is we stifle folks on accident all the time.